We all know Japan is world famous for being slim, with an obesity rate of only about 4%. But what if I told you that genetically we are actually built to gain weight? Honestly, I would have doubted until I found this data. Look at this. But 1 in 3 Japanese people has a gene mutation called the thrifty gene, which efficiently stores energy as fat and reduces its consumption. We carry this fat storing gene at a rate 2 to 3 times higher than people in the West. A nation of people biologically built to gain weight, yet we stay slim. It's a total paradox. So today I decided to take a closer look at my own daily life in Japan to know the reason behind that, and what I found wasn't about diet trending or discipline. It was holding in things I do every single day without thinking. Right, so let's think about this calmly first. Obviously, whether we gain or lose weight largely depends on our calorie intake. If we consume more than we need, we will gain weight. If we keep it below what we need, we'll lose weight. It's very simple. Therefore, the first thing I focused on was the food that we Japanese eat most often: white rice. In Japan, rice isn't just another food, it's the staple. We eat it almost automatically morning, noon, and night. For many adult men, 1 bowl isn't enough. Having 2 bowls in a meal is not unusual. So let's do the math for a second. 1 bowl of rice contains about 250 calories. If you eat that at every meal, rice alone adds up to around 750 calories a day. And it's easy to imagine gaining over 1000 calories if we have 2 bowls in every meal. By all logic, that should be a problem. Technically, I should already be deep into obesity, but somehow that isn't the reality here. So I decided to look more closely, not just at what I eat, but how I eat it. First, I opened the refrigerator. Inside, there is a container of leftover rice from the last night. I take it out, put it in the microwave, heat it up, and eat it. Well, this might be something many of you do as well, but here in Japan, there is a crucial difference: the nature of the rice itself. Japanese rice naturally contains a lot of moisture and has a sticky texture. Because of that, even after it has been cooled, simply reheating it in the microwave can magically bring back that soft, chewy texture, almost like freshly cooked rice. Because rice stays delicious even after cooling and reheating, a very common habit developed in Japan. Cook a larger batch of rice, store it in the fridge, and eat it throughout the next day or 2. It's such a normal, stress-free routine that most people never think twice about it. But hidden inside this normal habit is a small, invincible secret. When rice is cooled, something happens at the molecular level. Part of the starch structure changes and turns into something called resistant starch. As the name suggests, resistant starch is a type of carbohydrate that resists digestion. Instead of being easily absorbed as sugar, it behaves more like dietary fiber. Because of that, it may slightly alter how our body responds to carbohydrates. In other words, even if the amount of rice is the same, the way it is prepared and eaten can quietly change what happens inside your body. When I learned this, I realized it is done unconsciously in Japanese society. Think about bento ranches or convenience store onigiri. These foods are prepared hours earlier and served fully cooled. And we buy them and eat them without thinking twice. So Japanese people are not doing this for dieting purposes, but this very natural way of eating may quietly influence body weight without people even realizing it. And beneath Japanese food culture, there is another invincible rule. It's called Hara Hachi Bu. Literally, it means stop eating when you are about 80% full, while putting down your chopsticks before you reach complete fullness. But let's be honest, when I was a child, this didn't feel like wise health advice at all. It just felt like an unfair restriction. And yet my mother would always say the same thing. Alright, that's enough. Hara Hachi Bu is just right. But then I couldn't understand that. Why should I stop eating when I clearly could eat more? For a child, eating until the absolute limit feels natural. Being stopped halfway almost felt like being told you couldn't read the ending of a story. But when I grew up and started digging into this mystery, I came across an interesting scientific fact. It takes about 20 minutes for the brain to receive the signal that the stomach is full after you start eating. In other words, by the time you actually feel full, biologically speaking, you've already eaten too much. So the idea of stop at 80% full may actually function as a cultural buffer, a way to compensate for this 20 minutes gap between the stomach and the brain. From childhood through family life and school culture, this idea becomes quietly embedded in the back of our minds. And perhaps this invincible break, that instinct to stop just before being completely full, is one of the reasons why Japanese people can eat carbohydrate every day and still remain relatively slim. At this point, you might be thinking, but Japanese people must be incredibly disciplined. But do they eat perfectly every day and constantly control themselves? The answer is, as I said, no. If you look through Japan's nightlife district, that image quickly falls apart. After work, Japanese salarymen gather in izakaya Japanese pub, drinking glass after glass of beer or highballs, while tables swell up with grilled meat and deep fried dishes. In reality, Japanese people are also among the world's biggest lovers of alcohol and indulgent food. I'm not different. When I go out with friends for drinks or yakiniku, I often eat and drink until I'm completely full. We are just ordinary people enjoying ourselves. But in Japan, there is a different kind of ritual the next morning. It's called Kyukanbi, River Rest Day. When drinking nights continue, it's very common to hear someone say, "Let's make today a Kyukanbi." It literally means giving the liver a break. But this idea of resetting the body doesn't apply only to alcohol, it extends to food as well. I remember this clearly from my childhood when my family went on a trip and enjoyed a big dinner like steak or some kind of feast. The next day's meal would be surprisingly simple. Rice-rich, like miso soup and a small serving of pickles. My mother would simply say that, since we ate so much yesterday, today we need to let our stomach rest. At the time, I didn't understand it at all. We had just eaten something amazing the night before, while we suddenly eating something so plain. But of course, the original purpose wasn't dieting. The idea was simply to reduce the burden of the stomach. But meals designed to be, gentle on digestion are usually lower in calories, and people naturally eat smaller portions. As a result, the total calorie intake becomes lower. In other words, Japanese people don't necessarily avoid gaining weight. They have a system that brings things back into balance after overeating. But let's be honest, in modern, busy life, carefully cooking rice porridge or miso soup every time after a night of overeating can be a bit of a hassle. Even I sometimes reset my body in a much simpler way. One of those methods is one-day clearance using Ars Koso, the sponsor of this video. The idea is simple. After a night of yakiniku, beer, and eating until I can barely move, the next day I avoid solid food about 24 hours. Instead, I drink water and Ars Koso. The goal is to give my digestive system a break after putting a heavy load on it. While also offsetting the excess calories from the day before, you could think of it as a kind of calorie accounting system. Yesterday adds calories, today subtract them. But why not just drink water? The reason is what's inside the bottle. 100 plus ingredients, vegetable, fruits, seaweed, and mushrooms. And also 1 year fermentation, long natural fermentation. Postbiotics, probiotics, and prebiotics, designed for people who want to support their gut health. It's 100% natural, vegan, and made in Japan. A pure thirst with only water can sometimes leave me feeling weak. So personally, I find it much easier to continue when I have something like this. So that's why I use it as one option for my reset days. But the real reason I continue doing these cleanses isn't just about balancing calories. When I overeat and drink too much, it's usually when my mind is tired. I'm stressed or like dealing with a lot of work. And those nights often lead to, shallow sleep. The next morning, I still feel exhausted. Overeating, poor sleep, mental stress. These can easily become a negative loop. To break that cycle, I started paying attention to the gut. Modern research increasingly suggests that gut health is closely connected to mental health. For me, having these reset days helps stop the chain of overeating. I feel lighter the next morning and it helps me get back into my normal rhythm, including my weight. If you are looking for a simple reset system, you can try Ars Koso using the code JWN, which gives you 15% off your first bottle. You can find more details in the link in the description below. But resetting the body after overeating isn't the only reason Japanese people manage to maintain their weight. There are also small everyday adjustments built directly into daily meals. Japanese ramen, for example. It's basically a combination of carbohydrate and fat. One of the most feared dishes among dieters around the world. But hidden inside this dish is a kind of unconscious adjustment many Japanese people make. Whenever I cook ramen at home or order it at the restaurant, there's something I almost instinctively do. I add vegetables. Cabbage, bean sprouts, green onions, sometimes so many vegetables that you can barely see the noodle underneath. This isn't anything unusual. In Japan, it's a very common sight in both homes and restaurants. Even ramen delivery services often offer an option to add extra vegetables, and I almost always choose it. In a way, vegetables act as a physical buffer added to the carbohydrate heavy main dish. This habit of adding something subtly changes the overall quality of the meal. Ever since I was a child, the idea that ramen without vegetables is unhealthy was deeply ingrained in me. When I was young, I wanted to eat instant ramen every day. But both at home and at school, I was constantly told it wasn't good for my health. Because of that, even now as an adult, adding vegetable to ramen feels like a natural way to restore balance. And if you walk through Japanese cities, you will quietly notice how deeply the government recommendation of 350 grams of vegetables per day has penetrated everyday life. Right, so go to a supermarket or convenience store and you will almost always see labels like contains half a day's worth of vegetables. This is actually the salad I buy almost every day. It literally provides half of the recommended daily amount. Now imagine eating one of these for lunch and another for dinner. Just by doing that, a portion of your stomach that would normally be filled with carbohydrate will be filled with salad. So while Japanese people may appear to be eating a lot of carbohydrate, behind the scenes there is another important habit: consuming large amount of vegetables, which quietly helps prevent overeating and weight gain. But even more important than the amount of vegetables Japanese people eat is something else: the order in which we eat them. In recent years, a new rule has quietly become common at many Japanese dining tables. It's called vegetable first. Well, many Japanese people start their meals by eating vegetables or salad before touching the main dish. I often find myself doing that almost unconsciously, finishing about a third of the vegetables on my plate before I even begin, eating the rice. There's actually a surprisingly logical reason behind this habit. When the stomach is empty, vegetables are eaten first. Starting with vegetables may help slow the absorption of sugar and reduce sudden spikes in blood sugar levels. Vegetables also take up a lot of space and require more chewing. Because of that, simply eating vegetables first can create a sense of fullness before you even reach the main dish. As a result, the total calories consumed during the meal naturally decrease. Sometimes by the time I've eaten about half of a salada like this, I already feel my stomach starting to fill up. This small but consistent system of eating order may be one of the real reasons Japanese people can eat rice every day and still maintain their weight. So have we looked at how Japanese people eat, but there's another important perspective: the structure of the Japanese meal itself. The blueprint for this structure is called Ichiju Sansai. Literally translated, it means one soup and three dishes. But this is more than just tradition. It's a surprisingly rational layout that shapes the Japanese dining table. Take a typical Japanese meal. At the center is a bowl of rice, but it almost never appears alone. There's miso soup, a main dish like fish or meat, or vegetable side dish, and often a small additional side. What's important here is that this structure itself naturally prevents overeating rice. Because the meal is already divided into multiple dishes, our attention spread across different foods, rice, protein, and vegetables, instead of focusing only on carbohydrate. Looking back, I realized I grew up inside this system. A good example is a school brunch. From an early age, Japanese children are used to eating meals that combine rice with several side dishes. Many schools also teach a habit called sankaku tabe, or triangle eating, where students alternate between rice, side dishes, and soup rather than finishing one item at a time. This traditional blueprint of Ichiju Sansai may still function today as an invincible break, quietly preventing people from consuming too many carbohydrates. And interestingly, this isn't the only break built into the Japanese dining table. There's still another hidden mechanism. Let's take a look at that next. When I lived overseas, meals were often very simple. One large plate with, everything served on it. It was practical. Fewer dishes to wash. Fewer things to think about. But when I returned to Japan and started eating at the Japanese tables again, a certain hypothesis came to mind. So take this small rice bowl, for example. It has a clear physical limit. Only a certain amount of rice can fit inside it at one time. Well, of course, you can always refill it, but here's the point. Every time you finish a bowl, you have to make a small decision. Do I want another one? Unlike eating from a giant plate until everything is gone, this structure naturally creates a pause, a built-in break that makes you reconsider whether you actually want more. And then there is the ultimate tool that controls all of this. Have you noticed the fundamental difference between how we eat and how you eat? It's chopsticks. As we grew up in Japan, we learned to handle most of our meals using two thin chopsticks. With chopsticks, the amount of you can bring to your mouth at once is naturally limited. You can't scoop food the way you can with a spoon. Let's actually test that. Right, so the difference becomes obvious. Compared to a spoon, the amount of food you can pick up with chopsticks is dramatically smaller. In other words, Japanese people are constantly forced to eat in smaller bites. So perhaps the reason Japanese people can eat carbohydrate regularly without gaining as much weight isn't only about the food itself. It may also be about the tools and structures surrounding the meal. Things like the size of the bowls and the use of chopsticks, which quietly guide us to eat slowly and in smaller portions. So far, we've uncovered several hidden mechanisms inside the Japanese dining table, but to complete the puzzle, there's one more critical piece. It's what happens after we eat, how that energy is used. So here's a simple truth. Even without going to the gym, many Japanese people are forced to exercise every day. Not by discipline, but by the design of the city itself. So let me show you a normal daily in my life. Alright, so today I'm heading out for work. Nothing special, just a typical weekday for a working adult in Japan. Probably the biggest differences from many car-centered countries is that a car doesn't appear anywhere in my commute. So let's run a small experiment. Today I will use this Apple Watch to count how much footstep my everyday routine creates. So now this is in the morning. My food count is 378 at the moment. Alright, so let's see how many footsteps I will add on this from now on. First, I leave my house and walk through the nearest train station. In Japan, a 10 or 15-minute walk to the station is considered normal, sometimes even close. Once you get on the train, there is no guarantee you will get a seat. Many people stand, balancing their bodies as the train moves. Then when you reach your destination, you walk again, often climbing up and down complex staircases inside large stations before finally heading to your destination. Okay, so I've just arrived at Shibuya station. Let's check the footstep at the moment. But the story doesn't end with step count. There is another hidden factor I coincidentally found while I'm filming. To be fair, not every city in Japan is built on steep terrain. There are many relatively flat cities like Osaka or Nagoya. But when you step into places like Tokyo or other major cities such as Yokohama, Kobe, or centers of Japanese economies and population, you begin to notice something. Well, these cities are surprisingly full of hills. Take the area where I'm standing right now, Shibuya. Almost everywhere you go, you have to walk uphill first. Walk a little and there's another slope. Tokyo may look like a sleek concrete jungle, but in reality, it's a city built on top of complex and uneven terrain. Research also suggests that walking uphill can burn 1.5 to nearly 2 times more energy than walking on flat ground. For people living in cities like Tokyo, the landscape itself functions almost like a giant treadmill, one that is permanently set to incline mode. So simply going about daily life, moving from one place to another, gravity constantly works against our muscles, quietly burning the carbohydrate we've just eaten. Right, so I've walked so much, I'm definitely thirsty, so I want to buy a drink here in the convenience store, and I think this is also the difference. This cold green tea that I just picked up without thinking may actually represent the final and perhaps the most powerful difference in Japanese food culture. If you walk into a convenience store or look at a vending machine in Japan, you will notice something interesting about the drink selection. Green tea, roasted tea, berry tea, oolong tea. More than half of the tea available is unsweetened. In many countries, iced tea usually means sweet tea. But in Japan, the idea of adding sugar to tea has almost disappeared from everyday life. Why does this matter? Because it allows us to avoid the double hit of carbohydrate from the food combined with sugar from drinks. So imagine eating a large bowl of rice close to 1000 calories and then adding sugar soda on top of that. For the body's metabolism, it becomes a storm with no escape. But in Japan, people often enjoy their rice while making a conscious substitution in what they drink. They walk, climb hills, burn energy throughout the day, and they don't undo that effort by pouring sugar into their drinks. Alright, so I'm back home now. Let's count footsteps I got today. The day hasn't finished yet, but let's check the count. 9,976. It's almost 10,000 steps, which is I think it's a bit more than average, honestly, but it's not something unusual. So yeah, it's kind of like daily steps. Today I didn't change anything into running clothes. I didn't go to gym. I don't buy anything. Just walk around the city and got hydrated with unsweetened tea. Let's return to the question we started with. Why can Japanese people remain among the slimmest in the world? even while eating so many carbohydrates every day? The answer lies in layers of small systems. Each one might seem minor on its own, but when these elements overlap and operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they create a powerful structure for maintaining health. One that doesn't rely heavily on individual willpower. We are often told that dieting requires strong discipline, but the Japanese example suggests something quite different. The real solution may not lie in the personal effort alone, but in the design of the environment we live in. So if we want to change our bodies, perhaps the first thing to rethink isn't the calories on our plate, but the systems surrounding our daily lives. Eating vegetables first, choosing to walk for a part of our daily commute, switching sugary drinks for unsweetened drinks. By stacking small design changes like these, it's possible to build a personal health system that works naturally without constant struggle. So if you could change just one system in your daily life today, what would it be? Alright, so thanks so much for watching. So if you are interested in the daily life in Japan more, please also watch this video. You will definitely find interesting part of Japan. Alright, so see you in the next video. Bye.